everyone. Welcome to the Digital Adoption Show by WhatFix. We are the folks who practice and preach digital adoption, and WhatFix is one of the leaders in the space. And through this podcast, we bring to you thought leaders who help organizations upskill their human resources, train them, and all the things possible about how to make you successful and ensure a seamless digital adoption and learning experience. And in the podcast throughout, we'll also talk about all things that matter about digital adoption, digital transformation, organizational change management, technology adoption, and user experience. I'm your host, Gokul Suresh from WhatFix, and it's my pleasure today to welcome our guest, Emily Sheetz. Let me give a quick intro of you as well for the audience. All right, so Emily is a learning professional with more than a decade of experience designing and developing innovative learning solutions for clients such as American Red Cross, Nielsen, Sanofi, and Moët Hennessy. She's currently associated with Independence Blue Cross, the largest health insurer in Philadelphia, as a learning consultant for the Operations Academy training team, where she spends most of her time on projects aligning to business strategy, leading digital learning, and interfacing between clients and the design team. And also, interestingly, Emily is also the host of a popular L&D podcast called the L&D Forecast. So yes, once again, Emily, welcome to the Digital Adoption Show.
Thank you so much.
Yes, really excited for this conversation today and to learn more about you and your strides as an L&D practitioner.
Thanks, Gokul.
Okay, so to kickstart, Emily, first thing, I would like to learn more about you. And, I'm sure that intro might have been a little bit smaller. If there's something more that you want to share for the audience and also about your podcast, the L&D Forecast.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm so thrilled to be here. I have to say I've listened to a few episodes of this podcast, and I am blown away by the level of knowledge that you've had on your podcast and the things that they've thoroughly enjoyed the episodes and took notes while I was listening. So yeah, I am super humbled to be here. I have a podcast myself. So it's called the L&D Forecast podcast. And, it's a hobby. It's certainly not what I do professionally, but it's all about, learning and development. Where are we going? Where are we now? What does the future look like? I mean, I get so crazy as to think about, what L&D is going to look like, not just a year from now, but like 50 to 100 years from now, right? What are human beings going to be doing for work, and how are we going to get them ready to do that work? So, I'm a big fan of science fiction. So, it's very easy for me to just kind of fantasize about the future and, get crazy and try to build towards that future. And that's really, what the L&D Forecast is all about, is just this outlet for me to pontificate on our industry and where it's going, and, what are all the cool latest and greatest things that, L&D practitioners are doing nowadays, and where are we heading in the future.
Yeah, and that's just an amazing hobby, Emily. I mean, you're doing a service to the entire community ultimately, right? I mean, you're hosting the right folks. You're talking about things that, interest everybody in L&D and the future of work. Yeah, I mean, that's the hottest subject now.
Yeah, no, it's a cool conversation to be sure.
Yeah, and one podcaster to another. I mean, what do you think are your pet peeves when it comes to podcasting? I mean, mine definitely is obsessing about the audio corrections in the post-production aspect. What about you?
It's so funny you say that. So it's been a few months since I released my latest episode. So, but look out for season 2. It is coming soon. I'm working on content now, but it's actually kind of a similar thing. So the last couple of interviews that I've done, I actually use an app called Anchor to record my podcast. It's an amazing platform. I highly recommend, if you're at all thinking about starting your own podcast, use this. It's a great kind of beginner avenue into the space. But I noticed that at the end of some of my episodes, the audio mixing was getting just a little bit funky. And probably most people wouldn't notice it, but it was driving me crazy. And I couldn't figure out how to fix it. So I was hoping that maybe it was just kind of some kind of bug on their end, and that, they'll fix it by now. So I have to do some tests to make sure that gets corrected. But that is a pet peeve of mine. I want it to sound good. There have been podcasts I've listened to that I got really excited about. I'm like, oh, I love this person. I want to hear what they have to say. And, the audio quality has not been great. And it really messes up the experience. So it doesn't have to be perfect, right? But if it's low, if the voice is whispery or it's tinny, it's just not a pleasurable experience. And, you have a voice. That is the entire experience. And if it doesn't sound clear and good, then it all kind of falls apart.
Absolutely. I mean, it irks me out too, I totally get you. All right. And then let's talk more about your current organization and responsibilities there. I mean, what is that, let's say, the Operations Academy training team? I'm really curious about that. And also, what all do you do at your organization currently?
Yeah. So at Independence, we have a federated model. So there's an enterprise learning group. And then for each kind of area of the organization, we have our own, what they call academies, right? And they're all responsible for the learning and development and training of those different functions. So, you've got underwriting has one, you've got sales has one, and then operations. And we are big because we got a lot of people in our group, and our sort of primary focus or quote unquote client within operations is the call center. So we're talking about 1,000 agents that we're responsible for. And, with a frontline employee, you've got a lot of training sessions, you've got a lot of onboarding, you've got a lot of upskilling. So we are a busy, busy team. And then, what I do personally, essentially I interface between the business and our learning and design team. So the trainers and the designers. I try to get a sense of what the business needs, and then I work with the team to develop a learning solution for the business. And I just kind of keep those projects moving forward. And obviously, I have this obsession with all things digital. So I tend to lead on those projects, and just kind of getting our team more and more into the future, more and more into technology and how it can solve challenges.
Got it. And what are these projects generally? I mean, there's so many things happening, and I'm sure that there's tech savvy people, there's non-tech savvy people. There'll be a bunch of mix in that sense, right? So how do you deliver those learning projects?
This is by far the most diverse audience population I've ever dealt with in my career. I mean, you've got people where this is their first job. You've got people where they're coming back from retirement and, just want kind of, something to do post-career. So you've got all these age ranges, you've got all these ranges of experience. So, I mean, and technology savviness, it's really all over the place. So, the majority of our time is really spent in new hire and making sure that we're getting people onboarded and understand what a very complex. So Independence is a health insurance group, right? So anybody who's listening who knows anything about health insurance knows it's extraordinarily complicated. So you've got people coming in who are like most of us, where we know a little bit about it, but you come in and you have to learn a lot. So really, it's just kind of this fire hose of information trying to get you ready to be able to take these calls. So we spend a lot of time making sure that all of our materials are, up to standard, and new hire really gets everybody prepared. And then, of course, you've got people moving into different specialty areas, and, we're trying to upskill people and continuing to try to grow and develop them, not only to, be able to answer customer questions, but also in their own careers, right? Mm-hmm. Some folks, really want to stay within the call center, and that's their space and that's their strength and that's what they love to do, so they can move around in there, become supervisors, managers, or they can stay right where they're at and just become awesome, customer service reps. Or maybe they get interested in other areas of the company, and, what can we do to support their growth in order to get them ready to move into those different positions? So tons of projects, and not to mention, right? So I would say probably 90% of my time currently is spent on meetings and working on this particular project where we're totally revamping the call center software, which is a giant task that I've been on for over a year now. So all hands on deck for that, and lots of interesting work to be done.
Got it. And all of this is happening during the entire pandemic. I mean, you said...
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So how's that whole change management aspect? I mean, pretty much everybody's at home and, getting used to it and rolling out a new software. Wow. That's, that sounds scary and very, intriguing as such.
It is. Man, yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start with that. But yeah, it's a challenge in and of itself to get everybody up to speed and transfer everybody onto a new software, let alone. So the interesting timing of it was, we knew going into it, okay, this new software is coming. It's like really the mainstay application that most of the reps use. And we were developing, and then the pandemic hit. So we were going to be developing for an in-person training, and then the pandemic hit and everything had to be changed. We had to totally transform it into a virtual experience for them. But I got to say, I'm very impressed by the quick pivot that our team, our designers and our trainers did literally overnight to get ready for that. It was literally a month we had to finalize all the materials and get everybody through the training. And it was tremendous.
So, the recent times, whichever L&D leaders I've spoken to, I've asked them this particular question itself. I mean, you said everything worked well, the team was really cooperative, but was there a model that you actually found that works over there? I mean, is it like a scalable model, even in the current hybrid environment?
So, a couple of things I think of. Our team really needed to be adaptable, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like, I don't know that there's necessarily a model. It's like you just kind of have to know, have these soft skills like adaptability and willingness to simply try things. You could call it like a scientist mindset, right? So adaptability and a scientist mindset. And from there, really everything happens naturally. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different models for hybrid learning. And, do we, in the future, when people are back in the office, do we have, mixed classrooms where, there's some people are locally there within the classroom with the trainer, and then some people are remote. There's lots of stuff, and honestly, I think there's going to be a little bit of a Wild West moment as all of this kind of shakes out and shakes down, and we're not all just remote. But if you can have all the models in the world, all the frameworks, all of the best practices and tips. But if you're not ready to be adaptable and try things and learn, they're going to fall flat,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think coming from a digital adoption industry, I mean, that's why I'm curious about this part. You said it's a diverse crowd and it's a technology that they're adopting ultimately. And, getting people to utilize technology is never easy, right? Especially doing that over a Zoom call or even after the entire e-learning setup that is there. So how did you tackle that friction particularly?
It's funny. What I think surprises me the most is I honestly used to have this belief, and I think it's a myth, but it was one that I fell for. And I'd be really curious what your experience has been too. And really anybody who might be listening, I used to think that young people equals tech savvy, mm-hmm. older people equals not tech savvy, right? We got to handhold a little bit there. They didn't grow up with computers. They didn't have one in their back pocket since they were 5 years old. Mm-hmm. But what I found is through, anecdotal experiences, I don't have any real data on this, mm-hmm. is that really isn't true. My wife, she went back to get her bachelor's, and, she's in class with, 20-year-olds, and she was the one having to figure out how to use Zoom when they all were doing online classes, for her school, for her degree. Her classmates who are much younger than she is were like, I don't know how to present my screen. I don't know how to do a breakout room. I don't know how to do, and she would tell me this, and I'm like, really? I would have thought that just naturally they would have found the button, clicked the button, tried things but there was this hesitation, and it wasn't just one time. This happened multiple times. And then you've got this other side of the spectrum where I just heard this story this morning, which was nice timing for this podcast, right? Where there's a participant in one of our classes right now who came out of retirement and is learning a new system, we're doing an upskilling right now about a different kind of system, and she's whizzing around this system. I don't know exactly how old she is, but if she's gone through a career and now come out of retirement to come back into the workforce, she's not a spring chicken, right? Mm-hmm. So, but here she is whizzing around the system and knowing it and going faster than the trainer. And I'm just so impressed by that. So, to me, it's really less about oh, I, grew up with a phone, and I know all the buttons, and I, I'm ready to like use an iPad and, all this cool technology and stuff. I think it's really more about like, am I adaptable? Am I getting in there and trying things and not afraid of technology and not afraid to fail or push the wrong button, because I know I can go back. So, and then I really want to say this too. I think a lot of people are talking about, the challenges of the pandemic and digital transformations in the pandemic. Yes, there have been challenges. And I think that's why it's the question on everybody's mind and what we like to talk about. But to me, the challenges are so overshadowed by the opportunities that I've seen. The opportunity that we've had since March 2020 to digitally transform as a company has been huge, because now leaders, associates, and everybody in between, they don't have a choice but to adapt to this digital workplace. The only way that they can do their work is on their laptop, the majority of the company, right? People in the mailroom and other people that have to be on site, of course, are a different story. But the majority of our workforce, we're all still remote. The way that we get our work done is on our laptop at our desk or at our kitchen table. And there is no, going into the office and like, I got to print this thing out and I'm going to go to this meeting now and I'm going to build my relationships with these people over here. And I'm going to avoid sending that email or sending that chat because I don't really feel comfortable, using that technology or sending emojis. I don't really know what all that's about. So I'm just going to go over to that person at their desk. Mm-hmm. And now you've really just been forced into you can't be technically not savvy anymore. You got to have some skills behind you. You have to have some willingness to engage with technology to get your work done and to stay a good employee and to stay connected with your team. So I just see opportunities everywhere to really start to mind shift in general, people's comfortability with technology, but also L&D. I was listening to the episode that you did with Beth Loeb Davies, and something that she said was so cool, right? She talked about the self-referential flaw. I'm never going to forget it. I wrote it down. I want to get it tattooed on me, right? Because it's this challenge that I have faced my entire career where, leaders have this experience with learning, which is in the classroom, right? So she talked about, the self-referential flaw where, leaders are referring to their own experience when they think about learning. So when they interact with somebody from a learning and development department, the solution that they're thinking of is in the classroom because they think about that professor they liked, they think about that workshop they liked. And so if you try to come to them with the digital solution, they're like, whoa. That's not learning. I don't know what you're talking about. I had this amazing professor and he taught me about blah, blah, blah. And that's what I want, my team to do. Now we don't have that option. We've really been shaken out of this in-person mindset. We've really been shaken out of, we have to do it in the classroom. And so our minds have been forced open to all of these opportunities, to all of these things that we can do that are new and magic and awesome. And I love the kinds of conversations I'm having now versus what they were before.
I love that thought process, Emily. And I'm really glad that you brought Beth's self-referential flaw, that aspect here. No, I mean, in a way, it's an observation from my side as well. Back in 2019, there used to be so many articles written specifically for millennials or Gen Z on how the learning has been changing for them. And I think 2020 kind of hit a reset button over them and it just leveled the entire play field for them. I mean, irrespective of whether you're baby boomer, Gen Z, whatever you call it. I mean, ultimately, you had to adapt to that situation and that's how you grew, right? I mean, that's how it's going to be in the hybrid setup as well.
Absolutely. So I'm thinking of something about sort of this shift, right? And it's reminding me of the cultural norms of being in person versus being remote, where, when we're a hyper local company, Independence is like Philly, Philadelphia. It's very hyper local, and all the it's a very relationship focused company. We want to get together, we want to see one another, and then the pandemic hit, and then all of a sudden it was like, how do we interact with one another? Do we go on camera? What is this Teams thing, right? And there's this whole, training around Teams, but you can in a training for something like Teams, you can talk about where the button is. You can talk about how to create a breakout room. You can talk about how to use a poll, but you don't really talk about the cultural norms of a meeting. Whereas, in person, you had the cultural norms of the meetings in person, right? Where people sit and who
Decorum,
speaks up and right. And who's in the room. But Teams was the Wild West. Do I go on camera? Do I put something in the chat bar? Am I okay to put a GIF? Right? I know it's pronounced GIF officially, but I say GIF. I like it better. So do I put a GIF in the chat bar? Is that okay? Like, is my director going to not be okay with that? Right?
Yeah.
So there was all of this really kind of cool stuff happening with that, and a little like humbling moment for me. So I like to think of myself as like this very, very like future oriented technology person. Like, I'm very proud of that. And like, I'm always on mute when I'm not speaking, but there was this big like company-wide panel discussion, kind of not really a training, but more of like a session talking about a topic, and hundreds of people in there. The moderators were people that I really respect and want them to respect me. And right as the meeting was really getting going, the panel discussion was really getting going, I got a grocery delivery, right? Modern problem in modern pandemic times, right? I got a grocery delivery and somehow I got off mute. And so I'm unpacking my groceries, making so much noise with these brown paper bags. And all of a sudden I see this little flash come up on my computer, like, you have been muted. And when I tell you I nearly melted into the floor, I had been making so much noise on this giant meeting and just felt so silly. So yeah, lots to get used to, but it's okay to make mistakes, you'll be forgiven.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still freaked out about, reacting to things on even a Zoom call, right? I mean, raising a hand or, even the smileys over there. I don't know.
Yes. Like, what is okay? I think we still don't fully know. We're getting there as far as, what are we okay with? What are we not? But yeah, like, do I wear a nice shirt with this meeting with this particular person? Do I wear a t-shirt? Do they care? It's a lot. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah. And there's also the other side, the tech glitches, which is there, right? I mean, just last week, so we had a team lunch. Again, I mean, I've been promising my team parties for a while now, and it's all coming down to a virtual team lunch as such, or virtual team dinner. And everything was set up. The virtual team lunch happened. I joined in, started the meeting, and then my internet conked off.
Good timing. That sounds about right.
And I mean, I was just, there was some repair going on, something happening at the provider side. That happens a lot in India. So yeah,
Gotcha.
The whole thing went throughout, and I think an hour and a half, I was completely without internet. And the lunch went really well, by the way. And they all had the fun and, everything like that, See, this is something that happens on a regular basis, and there's a technology aspect to it. There is that anxiety aspect to it. Yeah. New normal, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're in good company.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, Emily, so I wanted to actually touch base on another one aspect as well. We've been talking a lot about what's happening now, but, also before independence, before the current company, how did you actually come into the L&D ecosystem, and what were the things that you were really into since, last decade or so?
Yeah, no. So I have kind of a unique backstory. I got my English degree from Temple University here in Philadelphia. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. Everybody was like, oh, you're going to be a teacher? Like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, oh. And something happened my last semester. I took an intro to advertising course and fell in love with the idea of, communicating with the public and getting them to do something. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was fascinating, and just there's so much psychology behind it. And it was so cool. And right around the time when I was graduating college was when, like Facebook and Twitter and social media was really being born, right? I was coming out of college at this really unique time where, companies like Nike didn't even have a Twitter, So it was just this crazy new dawn of marketing and advertising. So I got interested in it, and I've always been interested in technology. And I started going to these industry events with my English degree, still not having any idea really what I wanted to do. And I met my my boss, who is my previous boss, who's the president of this company called Steelworks, and they essentially, they build custom, technical solutions, primarily in the L&D space. So I met him at one of these industry events. We got along really well, and he was like, "Hey, I have some projects. If you are interested in working on some, let's work together." And so I started there, and absolutely loved the work. What I got to do and what we got to do was go to learning and development organizations within companies and say, what are the challenges you're facing and what's your big dream to solve them? Because we can build that for you. And it was such a unique and cool offering because we got to design solutions from the ground up with really smart L&D organizations who wanted to dream big, who wanted to try new things, who had unique challenges that really only a custom solution could solve, right? So we're talking about specialized learning platforms. We're talking about, onboarding courses that for many years had been in person, now taking them online. We built those things. And so I really come from, this background at Steelworks, which is super digital forward. So that's how I kind of grew up in my career, in my little baby career. I never had to say no to a client. I mean, there would be conversations about budget and how long it would take to build something, of course, and you'd have to kind of navigate that. But, I always was able to dream big. There were no restrictions. We could develop video. We could develop animations. We could do this. We could do that. And it was such an awesome thing to be a part of. And so, it's definitely a unique experience to be on the client side of things now, where we are working within budgets and we are working within here are the tools that we have to build things. How do we make this work? And I still can't help but think about the big problems and the big ways that we can solve them. And, I think that's probably what I'm the most vocal about on my team is hey, we have this giant software application that we're trying to train. Why don't we explore some of these digital technologies that are specially built to solve some of these challenges that we're facing, right? Like you guys at WhatFix, we have another partner that we work with, M-Level, soon to be most likely Exonify. And, there are real technology solutions that we can pull from and draw from that solve these challenges that we have now. And, the biggest one that we face is with this software implementation. We launched it officially, but now there's monthly enhancements. So how do we can't pull 1,000 people off the phone every month and train them on these new enhancements. How are we going to handle this? So real challenges that we're facing that, we really need to figure out big solutions for, and we can't think traditionally. So, yeah.
Really interesting story, Emily. And, something tells me that if you were not an L&D professional, you would have been a marketer.
I might have been. It's a fascinating space. It really is.
Yeah, amazing. And, just to add on to that, I had another question that came across my head. You mentioned so many different, you've gone through so many different techniques and methods of learning. And, what are those favorites? Let's say top 3, which pretty much, that sticks and works.
Okay. So as a learner myself, when I think about learning technology, so a lot, like I kind of mentioned, I was kind of talking about, I come from a digital first background. So Steelworks is all digital. We didn't even provide any kind of VILT solution. We would partner with people who provide that solution specifically. So virtual instructor-led training. We didn't provide that. So I grew up digitally and I've gotten really comfortable with my own development by not going to school and taking classes, right? The past several years, the way that I've learned about technology and data and personalizing learning and all these things that I'm really fascinated about, I've learned from podcasts and books and conferences and webinars and magazines like Fortune and Harvard Business Review. So I've kind of self-curated this totally digital, for lack of a better word, school experience, and not just sort of soaking in from these, content mediums, but also, holding myself accountable by creating a blog, by starting a podcast, by attempting to learn as much as I can about these things and applying it back on the job at my job, right? So as far as my favorite kind of, learning technologies as a learner, I know what works great for me, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have gone to Google and said, Google, how do I fix this issue that I'm having with my heating unit? I know nothing about heating. I don't need to know anything about HVAC. I don't need to take a course in HVAC. I need to know how to fix this problem that I have now. And guess what? In 3 seconds, I know how to fix the problem, right? I mean, if it's a deeper problem, obviously I got to call in a professional. But, there's some basic things that I am empowered to do now because I have these incredible resources at my fingertips. And that's in my real life. And it's also in my professional career. I have these powerful, powerful resources that I'm able to access. So all of that being said, because those are my favorite ways to learn, I can't help but use those in my job and when I'm trying to provide solutions for other learners and associates within their own careers. I think you asked about like technologies and what are some of my favorites there, right? Like just
I was asking particularly, I totally relate to what you said, Emily, because even I do that a lot. So Googling,
right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm pretty sure even the audience in general, that's like the go-to thing. If you don't know something, Google it first, right?
Exactly.
And the technology aspect particularly, I was coming to that because, the learning technology is booming, right? There is LMSs, there's LRPs, LXPs, and WhatFix is digital adoption platform. There's so many different aspects, new technologies which is coming to, pretty much cater to enterprises, SMBs, irrespective of the size of the company. It's all about employee experience ultimately, right? So that's why I was really curious, what actually works for you, right? What have you tried? What are the things that, that you think that sticks very well?
Awesome. I love this question. So first, I'll get into a technology that we've really kind of expanded and grown within our own organization. But I have to mention this other little technology first. It's not exactly what you're asking about, but I literally can't help myself but mention it. So there's this company, it's this awesome new AI technology by a company called Synthesia. I think that's how you say it, Synthesia. And basically, you feed this Synthesia, this technology, a video script, and then you select a realistic-looking AI person who reads the script into like a camera, and then you have different backgrounds that, you have the AI describe what's going on in the background. So basically, like you have a talking head who's explaining something, a video and behind them, or maybe they're just speaking in the camera. They're like, "Hey, welcome to Independence. We're glad you're here. Here's about our company." But this is not a real person. This is an AI. Wow. So, and it looked real. It absolutely looked real. And I had no idea this technology existed. Did you know this? Did you know about this?
I'm looking at the website right now and wow.
It's so awesome. And the beauty, it removes so many, friction points that you might have with video, right? Where if you're talking to a client and they're like, we really want a video. And we're like, well, it's really not practical in this situation because it's expensive. It takes time to create. If there are updates to the content, it's difficult to bring in this person again to re-record updates. So we end up defaulting with like PDFs and, maybe more traditional content modalities. But with this, you make easy updates. You can pick the language as well. So they operate in several different languages. So if you're a global company with many different languages, it's very easy for you to create multiple versions of the same exact video in multiple languages. So, it's just so interesting. And they allow you to do this kind of little free video. And I did that. And I used an AI to introduce a presentation that I was doing to some fellow learning and development folks. And, and it was a pretty cool presentation, what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And I was excited to get to it, but I was like, I gotta show up this AI thing. It's so cool. And everybody, like, after the AI introduction was like, whoa, what, how is this possible? That was so amazing. You have to talk more about that. And they ended up being more interested in the AI thing that I did than this really cool, presentation on ROI that I had spent all this time on. And, this AI video took like 5 minutes to put together. It was it was only like 9 seconds, but it was so simple and easy to do. So I highly recommend checking that out. It totally blew my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't remember exactly the name, but this is their. They've been using it for so many different ways. That there is this really famous Instagram influencer, and she has a lot of million followers, and ultimately she's just an AI, or she's just a virtual character. And on a daily basis, she goes around, she goes to the mall, she goes to the beach, has fun with her friends. And it's just completely virtual, something that somebody has created. And she's a big influencer, ultimately. Right. Things are changing so much.
Right. It's so weird. And, I think some people are dazzled by this and think it's really cool. And then other people are like, that's creepy. And, I think there's going to, as time goes on and we get more and more comfortable with the technology, I think there's going to be far fewer people in the creepy category and more in the like, all right, like, I get it. This is fine. It's just a computer. It's not a big deal. But it's pretty neat.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I just remember the name. That's Michaela. That's an
yes.
Lil
yes.
Michaela.
Oh man, yeah. I'm gonna look that up. I've heard about it, but I haven't done much exploring. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll come in that borderline creepy or excited, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And that brings me to the next question as well. Future of work.
Yeah.
I know you want to talk more about this, but what are those let's say technological additives to L&D that you're really rooting for? I already found synthesize. What else? What do you think would be the future of L&D? What does it look like?
Oh man. Oh, that's a loaded question, Gokul. So anybody that knows, future of work, right? I have absolutely no idea what the future of work is going to look like, other than we are going to be so there's this quote out there. Let me get my thoughts together. There's this quote out there that's like, every company is a technology company. And I don't remember who said it, but what it's essentially saying is, whether you're in health insurance or medicine or, any number of industries, you are actually in the technology industry because it is everywhere and it is everything. And, if you're in the trucking industry, if you're in logistics, like, it is the driver of our modern world. So you better get used to it. And I hate to put it that way. It sounds maybe more aggressive than it is. But I really believe that that's true. And I think, these past 18 months of the pandemic or so have really kind of proven that, if you're not able to get down with technology, you are at a very serious handicap. Anybody that knows me knows that over this past year, I've really become super obsessed with targeted learning. So what I mean by that is I want to know enough about a person, about an associate. We often call them our learners, but really they're associates. They're working at a job. They're not in school. They don't think that they're in school. They don't want to be in school. Most of them, they're just trying to get their job done. And my big dream is, can I learn enough about this person? Much like Google knows everything about you and me, Facebook knows everything about you and me. It is what it is. Can I know enough about this person, about what their strengths are at their job, what their weaknesses are at their current job and their current role, and deliver learning to them that is relevant and meaningful in that moment? That, I think, is the future of work, where you got to be really strong in your current role. You got to be used to technology. You got to be comfortable with learning digitally, and you got to be comfortable with your learning companion or your learning experience knowing about you and knowing that, hey, you come from a customer service background. I'm not going to give you customer service content right now. You know that stuff. What you don't know about is handling claims calls really well, right? In health insurance, we have, claims that we deal with, and you call in, you have a question about a claim, and you want to talk to a rep that knows a thing or two about what's going on with you. So if I'm a customer service rep and I don't know much about that, I want to have a technology that gives me content, that knows that, gives me content and helps me level up so that I can do my job better and serve our customers better, get paid more, get those bonuses because I'm meeting my metrics. So I'm totally obsessed with this idea of targeted learning, and not only to support them in their current role, but also in their future role, right? So I might be a rep, but I have big dreams to become a UX designer, right? I want to I'm super interested in design and user experience. And, right now I'm a rep, but I want to get into this other field. So I want my learning assistant, right, to know that about me and to give me not only content that's relevant to my job now, but also relevant to my big goals and dreams. And then have proof that I have leveled up and that I know enough, and I've, maybe have some opportunities in other areas of the organization to kind of work on a project, right? So, there's so many benefits, not only to the learner, but then you have the business, benefiting as well, because this learning technology is saying, hey, you've got this rep sitting over here that's got some really interesting UX skills. You should really put them on this project. And, really allowing technology to connect those dots for people, not only the associate, but also the business. That's huge. And, we're finally really starting to do some of that. I mean, it's happening all over the organization, but what we're doing, especially is we're using this technology called M-Level, which was recently purchased by Exonify. So we're looking into maybe transitioning to the Exonify platform, which has a very similar kind of learning philosophy with, this kind of targeted learning idea where it really knows who you are and, delivers, spaced and repetitious learning to you to, see which questions you get right and wrong. And then it can deliver customized content based on that. And what we get to see now is this relevant, meaningful content coming to the learners, coming to the associates in little bite-sized chunks. But then also on the back end, the business gets to see, okay, we see that Emily is fantastic at customer service. She gets high marks all around, but then when she's trying to answer questions about claims calls, she's really struggling. So, and then we get to see that, okay, Exonify kind of steps in and says, here's some content for you to level you up. And now the business gets to see how Emily has grown based on this learning intervention, right? And this learning support. And then you get to see those overall trends as a business, and you get to see, okay, so there were a bunch of Emilys who all had the same issue. They were performing here at X point in May 2020, and now it's May 2021, and now they've increased their knowledge and they're performing better. And I get to actually see that growth as a business, and I get to justify my investment because I'm seeing real-time return on investment with these amazing graphs and seeing that growth get tracked. So it's an extraordinary platform, and I can't wait to really do more with it. But that's the philosophy behind it. And I really do think that that's the future, is this sort of data foundation where, we're delivering that content to the learner that makes sense. And we're also being able to use that data to prove business impact to leadership in the business. So it's really exciting stuff and stuff I like to think about a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not too far away, right? I mean, this might be a shameless plug, but I just wanted to mention that, with WhatFix, we do some part of this as well, because the contextual learning, making it completely customized for the learner based on where they are within any application. Now, that's very powerful. I mean, if they are there, instead of going for a Google and figuring out how to do a particular task on an application, like you're talking about the insurance space particularly, we work with a lot of claims excellence folks, maybe like on a Guidewire or Majesco or any of these applications. And generally, these are heavy applications, which, difficult to understand, difficult to get trained on, and they need contextual help. And exactly the thing that you said, Emily, how do we provide contextual help to a person so that they can upskill consistently wherever they are, however they are going about their learning with whatever pace that they have?
Yeah, cool. That it's not a shameless plug. You should be plugging that everywhere you go. I love the technology that you guys have. This digital adoption platform thing, I think, is so strong in learning principle. And I mean, it really is like having somebody right next to you who can walk you through technology, a software application, right? I would have loved to have somebody sit next to me the first time I got the iPhone and I didn't even know how to make a call. I would have loved embedded help, where I could just say, hey, how do I make a call? Ask the dumb questions to this technology and it says, hey, this is how you do it. What you guys are doing is so extraordinary and practical and solves so many issues that people have with using new software and the business challenges associated with it. I think it's extraordinary.
Yeah, you just made the case for me. I mean, you just extended the plug for me. But yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. All right, Emily, I think there's a lot to talk, but in the interest of time, let's come down to the end bit of the podcast. So that's a rapid fire. Right.
Okay.
A few questions. It'll be much easier. Let's have some quick answers there. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it.
All right. So as a fellow podcaster and most importantly, one focused on L&D, what are your favorite podcasts?
The best one out there is the Digital Adoption Show podcast.
Thank you.
No, it really is a great podcast. I can't recommend it enough, not just because I'm on it, but you've had remarkable guests and amazing conversation. So I love this podcast. I really do. And I have subscribed and I will continue to listen. To branch out, Learning Tech Talks with Christopher Lind is an amazing L&D tech show. And 3 quick plugs for podcasts that I listen to regularly that are not L&D focused, but are around technology and about the future, which I love. There's 3 of them. There's Gadget Lab, HBR's Idea Cast, and Future Tense. So highly recommend those 3 as well.
You missed the L&D Forecast.
The L&D, yes. I'm trying to, just check it out. It's a good one. L&D Forecast podcast,
Yep. All right. The second question, what is your learning philosophy? I mean, if you haven't thought about it, what do you think it would be?
I have one. Mm-hmm. It's built around the learner, but for the business. And I'll expand a little bit on that. So, we want to build learning for the learner. I think we have plenty of webinars and discussions around learner experience. But what we don't talk enough about is the business experience. So are we creating learning that's relevant and meaningful to the learner? But are we also making sure that it's meeting real business needs at the organizational level? I think it's important to meet both.
Yep. Interesting. All right. And the last question for rapid fire, I'm not keeping it too long. As a leader in the space, I'm sure there are many people who you look up to. I mean, who are they?
Yeah, first and foremost, this is a recent one for me. A woman named Lena Nair. She is the CHRO of Unilever. I saw her speak at Degreed's little conference, virtual conference that they had. Mm-hmm. What's that?
That's Lens 2021.
Yes, that's it. Highly recommend it if you can attend. She gave a little talk. It was like 25 minutes. And I got to tell you, I wanted to vote for her for president. Like she was just so articulate and so people focused, but smart. And you could just feel her leadership in the air, and just an extraordinary speaker. And she's got a lot of stuff on YouTube. She has her own podcast, does a lot on LinkedIn and stuff. So highly recommend checking out Lena Nair. I also love Christopher Lind. I mentioned his podcast earlier. I'm a total fangirl of his. And then I like this guy, JD Dillon from Exonify, who does a lot of webinars, a lot of content. He's a smart guy. And then the last one I'll shout out is my old boss, Nick Floro. He's a brilliant genius. The president of Sailworks. He creates extraordinary learning experiences for folks. So he is always somebody that I will look up to.
Awesome. I'm just going to put all those names in the transcript for the podcast on the website. So you guys can check it out there. Right. And the last question, this is something that we ask all the guests at the podcast. What is the one word or phrase that comes to your mind when you think about digital transformation and adoption?
Data.
Mm-hmm.
Data is it. It is the foundation of the future. So data.
Awesome. Yep. That's just perfect. All right. So, Emily, we have come to the end of another episode of Digital Adoption Show. And, once again, thanks a lot for joining us. This was an amazing conversation. And I think, I could have spoken to you for hours longer, but
Same here.
Something that I'll remember for a long time for sure. Right. So
thank you so much.
Before we close, Emily, it would be awesome if you could share how people can reach out to you and the podcast. Where can they find it? Yeah, pretty much. How do they reach out to you?
Sure. Anybody, anytime, reach out on LinkedIn. That's the best place to get a hold of me. LinkedIn, I think, I don't know, just search Emily Sheetz, Learning and Development. I'll probably come up. And then the L&D Forecast is really anywhere you listen to a podcast. You can just search on Apple Podcasts, search the L&D Forecast podcast. It's on Spotify. It's pretty much available anywhere. So please check it out, and do not I mean this, do not hesitate to reach out. I love talking about this stuff. I love meeting people in the industry. So please do find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Pleasure having you here. I'm really glad to host you on the Digital Adoption Show. And thanks to everyone listening to the podcast, and stay tuned to the Digital Adoption Show for more great content and some really incredible speakers, just like Emily. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. So that's a wrap.